And thank you so much for joining us. Oh no, hold on. I think I can put you up here. There we go. Yeah, we want to see you, not us. And also, this is just going to our YouTube channel, so don't feel like it's like going out to everywhere or anything like that.
Okay.
Yes. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Julia from Itinerant Literate Books. Danielle over here is our marketing manager and helping with me with book club tonight. And then this is our book club for this evening. The food tonight, so it's a book and dinner club. The food tonight was toddlers and tea was the theme. So we had some like upscale toddler food
Amazing.
it was really good. We had some very good chicken fingers that were brine and pretzels with dip, and we haven't had the dessert yet, but it looks amazing. Um, yes, and we're all very excited that I will say the discussion has been very lively tonight. Lots of good thoughts and questions have come up, and we have a lot of them captured here to ask you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yay.
Let me make sure this is on. All right. So I sent you. Is it too loud? Is that okay?
No, it's fine. It's fine for me.
Great. Okay, so I wanted to start with obviously the question of sort of where the book came from. I know having read some of the interviews with you, there's a little bit of at least emotional autobiographical stuff going on. But I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about the genesis of the book and maybe how you walk the line between your experiences and what Nightbitch's experiences were.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, wow. Thank you so much for having me, letting me intrude on your fun evening. I wish I could have just been there and heard all the conversations that you've already been having and had some chicken fingers. Yeah. So, yeah, it might not surprise you to know that this book definitely came out of a deeply autobiographical impulse. Um, I had sort of defined myself as an adult. Like my coming of age was when I became a writer when I was in my early 20s. That's sort of like how I became a grown up as I started writing. And it was a really big part of my identity. And then fast forward, to when I'm in my 30s and I had my son. And for the first 2 years that he was alive, things got a little they got changed up a little bit, as happens when you have a child. And I stopped writing for 2 years, and it felt like a very pronounced silence right after more than a decade sort of using writing to kind of like come of age and like help me figure out who I was. There was this immense sort of silence that ushered me into motherhood. And that was pretty terrifying, because I really lost touch with like this essential part of myself. And that silence is what Nightbitch came out of. Nightbitch was like the first thing that I started writing when I started writing again. After 2 years of sort of sitting in the silence, kind of, looking around me at this sort of baby bomb that had been dropped and just thinking about the way things were and why they were the way they were and could they be different. Yeah, so that was sort of where it all came from. I also during that time of silence did a fair amount of reading, none of which I remember, because your brain, I mean, my brain was just like complete mush. Anything in just like instantly got forgotten. However, I did read Department of Speculation by Jenny Awful, and there was a little passage in it about the narrator is a mother and a writer, and she says something like, "I never wanted to get married. I always wanted to grow up to be an art monster instead." And for some reason that really resonated with me. And I like opened up a document, typed it in there and shut it, never to like remember it again until Nightbitch was all like drafted and done. But this idea of kind of wanting to be an art monster, wanting to give yourself over to this creative drive, while at the same time being a mother, that just felt very present, very provocative for me.
Yeah. I feel like the art monster, like, so you went back later and then saw that line that you had written and were,
Yeah,
it
I
was,
didn't go back, and it was right when I was doing early publicity for my book, right as it was coming out, and people are like, "Where did this book come from?" And I was like, "Let me see if I have any documents from, around that time." And I went and looked, and I found it there, and I thought, "Oh, this was, like, way deep down in there, and I'd forgotten about it, but it's completely present."
there is sort of like a mix of mothers and non-mothers here, and women who have dealt with postpartum and women who haven't. And I wonder if you can, I don't know, maybe this to relate, like how the dog imagery maybe came into that experience, or yeah, I didn't ask the group what they thought about the dog specifically, but yeah, I was curious if there was a reason for that for you.
I mean, there was no conscious decision. Let's just say it wasn't really thought through all that much. Literally, my husband and I were joking around one morning, and he was like, "You were sort of a night bitch last night," which I thought was funny too, because I had sort of been a night bitch. And then I was like, "What if I wrote a book where like the mom is actually a dog? That would be a really bad idea." And he's like, "Yeah, that'd be absurd." And so I did that because it seemed like it would be fun, and something just felt right about it. It just felt like, "Oh, I could do something with this," and I didn't give it too much thought, um, and ran with it.
Yeah. Um, in that vein, in your research for the book, or had you encountered it before the book "Women Who Run with the Wolves," and was wondering if that is maybe where the book within the book comes from at all.
Yeah, that book keeps coming up and is on my shelf now. I've never read it, um, and I know I need to, but for some reason, I just haven't been able to yet. So one day I'm gonna read that book. The whole book within a book, I think that's just something that I, as a reader, really love. Like, I just, reread The Neverending Story with my son, which is like the ultimate book within a book, and remembered how much I loved that when I was little. And um, in other projects that I've worked on, that's been something that happens. I just think because it feels so natural for me for a plot turn to be a character like going to a book because like I'm such a reader and that's just my life. Um, but I think, in terms of just like narrative wise for Night Bitch, the protagonist really needed a friend, like a confidant and a friend in this book. And I think that's where Wanda White comes in. Even though Wanda White, never talks back and we never really see her, the book and Wanda are like her friend and a way that she can express herself.
So we had a few questions about Wanda and the book, and I guess a lot of authors also don't like to put too much. They want readers to like bring to the book what they want, I guess. So maybe that's how this is. But did you envision Wanda White being that woman she encounters at the dog park? Um, or why did you want to give her this silent, like confidant instead of someone who could talk back to her, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, Wanda White sort of turns into a religious figure, doesn't she? Like, because she's sort of Night Bitch is sending these missives out into the ether. I think she even says at one point it's sort of like prayer. And it just, I don't know, it felt like a sacred sort of relationship, which felt right. And she's such a isolated internal character. That it just I don't know, for some reason that felt right. Is the woman at the dog park Wanda White? Great question. I would love to know what you guys think. In my mind, the backstory that I kind of had in my mind, which isn't in the book, is I'm like, I think Wanda White might actually be a performance artist herself, and I think the Field Guide for Magical Women might have been her art project, right? That she made and put on a library shelf. and maybe this is a sort of communion between two artists. That's not something that I ever explicitly expressed, but I like to imagine that as sort of the backstory.
Okay, very cool. I like that. I think that it touches what everyone was kind of grasping at knowing. Maybe just shift like a little bit. I think that in some of the interviews you've given already, is that you talk like there's a lot of anger, specifically maybe at the patriarchal system that we live in Nightbitch, and that Nightbitch herself is experiencing. And the way she, I guess the way the book concludes, she finds a way to circumvent it. But I was wondering if you feel like that's, how do you feel about that as a system for women, like in the real world, to take? I guess, if that makes sense, or how do you grapple with that?
Does make sense, Julia. Man, I wish I had some answers for you and some solutions. I think that there are women much smarter than I am who are, doing amazing advocacy work. Angela Garbus is one of them. She wrote this amazing book called Essential Labor and has another new book out. If you kind of want to read on the more like wonky side of the issue. I just think, when the whole deal with anger and with Nightbitch's anger is that anger is always a cover-up emotion. It's not what's really going on. And of course, what's going on for Nightbitch is that she feels really helpless. And she feels really stuck. And the way that comes out is through anger. And I think this also, her anger and her helplessness is also really tied up in female desire and how threatening female desire is to the patriarchy. Because if women start owning, claiming, saying, speaking their desire, that's when the patriarchy starts to fall apart, right? When we start taking our dreams and our desires and turning them into realities and shaping society around our desires, that's when the patriarchy falls apart. And so ultimately, I think the rage, the animal, all of that is about desire and how finally Nightbitch is saying, I am not just going to be happy with what I get. I deserve to have what I want. And that is like dangerous. It's vicious. It's something that sets her free. And I think that's kind of like when you ask like why the dog, like that's why the dog. It's like all tied up in that image.
Yeah. Wow, I felt very empowered listening to this again. Thank you. Okay, so I guess maybe a natural follow-up to that is, have you talked to men who have read this book, and what have been those perspectives? And I think I may have read that your husband read the book, and I'm really curious about what his reaction was about it too.
Okay, can I just tell you the most amazing, hopeful story about a man I met in North Carolina, actually at an event. He was sort of a good old boy. I was at a bar, and it was just like for some reason I was with a bunch of men. I was out with a friend. I was there for a conference. And these guys walk up, and my colleague says, "Oh, this is Rachel. She's here. She's giving a reading. She wrote a book called Nightbitch." And of course, they all laughed. And I said, "Yeah, it's about a mom who turns into a dog." And one of these men who I've just met, I might not even know his name yet, says, "Oh, I just thought it was about her being a bitch." And I went, "Oh, no, 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 no. No, that's not what it is." And he knew I was very upset with him. So wouldn't you believe it? He showed up at my reading the next day.
Really?
And he came through the signing line. He bought a book and he said, "Wow, I feel like I understand my wife's point of view better now. And will you sign this book for her?" And so I thought I had his number. I thought he was just like all the rest of them, da, da, da. And he totally proved me wrong. And that was an awesome moment. And I have heard a number of stories like that where women are like, I gave this to my husband, or men just like contact me directly and they're like, oh, this like really opened my eyes to some, like, in retrospect, I feel like I understand things a lot better now. My own husband was so supportive. I mean, the whole reason I could write this book is because he would look at me on the weekends and be like, are you going to the coffee shop? Are you going to go write for 3 hours? And I'd be like, yes, okay, right. And he would, my son's sitting in the kitchen doing his homework, so he's listening to all this. He's like, he would take care of me. It's like, yes, he would. And yeah, I mean, I guess he didn't have all that much to say after he read it, because I mean, it is quite personal. And even though it's personal, it's not like, it's still a fiction, you know what I mean? So um he didn't have all that much to say, but I do think that he, like understood a little bit more intimately, like perhaps maybe like the loneliness and the struggle that I had gone through that I hadn't really articulated.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like both hearing about other men's perspective on the book and hearing the discussion here tonight, it's very stark and interesting to like. Yeah, I don't know. I'm so glad you shared that like also very hopeful story.
I mean, there's also like a TikTok of some guy like throwing my book into a trash can, which he like took the time to film himself throwing it away, which I found very entertaining. So I mean, there's that side of it, I guess.
That side of it. That's it. Okay, I want to make sure. Okay, we had one other question, maybe about like things that went into Nightbitch, which we were wondering if. So did you grow up in a Mennonite community? Is that right?
I did.
Do you feel like that played into maybe some of the gender roles that play in Nightbitch at all, or yeah, that's that question. Yeah.
I mean, yes, 100%. I think, I came out of a really traditional religious upbringing where, I haven't seen some of my aunts ever in pants. They wear dresses and coverings. And so for me to want to like go to college and live on my own and just be a different kind of woman and not get married right away, it was really hard. And I like had to make a big break from my family. And so I think this book is still part of me trying to reconcile that, and to come to terms with like who I want to be, and is it okay to be the person I want to be?
Yeah. Okay. We have one follow-up question.
So you said that So you said that you kind of inspired as well as a conversation with your husband in writing this book, and this was the first book you wrote after your 2-year hiatus of becoming a mom. Did the process of writing this book change how you parent or how you view yourself as a parent?
Could you hear that, Rachel, at all?
Could you maybe repeat it?
Yes. So she was wondering, you talked about, I guess, did the book change how you parent now? Did you and your husband have conversations before you had a child and then after you wrote the book? Has that changed at all?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely did help us like open. For me, I think my problem is that I just don't say a lot of things. And I hear that maybe some other women might struggle with this too, like I just keep a lot inside and I don't like confrontation. And so this book was first a way of me kind of like coming into conversation and confrontation with myself, like in a really safe, creative space, like this is my creative space. No one else has to read it but me. I can be completely honest. And if I don't ever want to show it to anyone, I don't have to. And so to a large extent, this book was me like working out for myself, like what was going on with me. And after I kind of worked through that, then I was able to sort of like bring that to my husband and, have the conversations that we needed to have. So in a sense, it's like it was like a 3-year self-directed stint of artistic therapy in a certain way, but more fun than therapy because I got to, make up stuff about were moms.
Yes. One of the things that we discussed a little bit was how women have to come up with explanations for their lives, basically, like themselves as mothers or themselves as women, and how it's not maybe the same for men. And have you found that? I mean, obviously, I think probably as a woman you found that to be the case, but also maybe specifically in talking about Nightbitch or getting the book out there, have you ever had that starkly reflected back to you, maybe?
Can you just say a little bit more about that, like about labels or like defining myself as a certain this or that or the other thing? Is that what?
You guys know what I'm talking? We're talking about how women sort of have to justify their behavior, I guess, maybe, and justify their choices and rationalize their choices more so maybe than men have to, at least to other people. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I was also just having this is related, a really good conversation with a friend the other day who had to reschedule a meeting. And she was like, should I say it's because I have to take my kid to get an MRI, which I do actually need to do? Or should I say it's because I have another deadline that I'm working on, and so I need to push this other meeting back, which is also true. She's like, which would look better, like the mom me or like the business me? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like what we have to negotiate. Like what self are we what's gonna look better? What self do we have to put forward? And I said, what a man would do? He wouldn't give an excuse. He would say, I need to change the meeting.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to make fewer justifications and fewer excuses. And I think this also goes along with my whole theory of sort of radical underachieving, which is a philosophy I'm now embracing. I think for women, we're really praised when we overachieve and overperform. And at this point in my life, I'm done overachieving and overperforming to make other people's lives easier. And it's a real conscious practice. I call it radical underachieving. So
Radical.
something you want to consider.
Yeah, I like it. We will take that up here, I think. We do have a couple questions. I do want to check with anyone on like more thematic things. Anyone think of anything before I switch over to the film question? Yeah.
I have a last minute question. Can you hear me? And
You can just say
okay, it's a little bit picky, but it hit me. It hit me hard. So first, thank you for writing this book because it was very empowering. The book was very empowering. But there is a point on page 200 where you use the word you, like you direct to the reader. You just wrote them and then pressed send. And then later it says, and we might say that Nightbitch during this time in her life became quite religious. And I don't remember a lot of moments in the book where I, the audience, was pulled in, but you said we, and I was like, is this me? Am I like part of this like wolf pack? Like who is this for? So I just wondered. I know that I'm asking this because you wrote this and then you're like, I don't even know if that was a conscious choice or not, but who is this for? And are we the wolf pack?
Oh my gosh, what a beautiful question and close read. Thank you. I love your interpretation of it. Yeah, I think one, that wasn't a conscious shift on my part. And I think that by the time I got to the end of the book, it just felt so immediately communal and so much like the writing had entered into a space that didn't belong just to me, that belonged to all of us. And that this was a book that wasn't just about one woman, but was about all women. That's probably why it slid into that point of view. Yeah, by the end, it just became about something much bigger than, one mom sitting by herself in her living room with her kid. Thank you for that read. It was really gorgeous.
Last call out there for any other last minute one. Okay. We did want to ask kind of a few final questions that are more like topical, maybe. So I was wondering if you had any direct input on the upcoming film, and another person here was wondering if you had imagined someone of Amy Adams's characteristics being Nightbitch, or if that was a surprise to you.
Oh my gosh, you guys, never in a million years did I imagine this would be a film. That was not even on my radar. Who would be insane enough to make a weremom film? Like, absolutely bonkers. No, this was like completely out of right field. And actually, the first person who came on the project was Amy. Amy wanted in before anyone else. And it was completely surreal, and I am so grateful to her, and I can't wait to see what happens. I did not have that much input. The director, who is brilliant, her name is Marielle Heller. She's made a number of other brilliant films, wrote a really gorgeous adaptation, which I got to read before they started filming and loved. And the really exciting thing about it is that she took the story, and then as an artist herself was able to take it and shape it into something that also included like her experience and her aesthetic and her worldview, which is the best possible outcome, right? To have this thing that inspires other women to want to make art is just, I mean, like the ultimate. I'm just so grateful. It's just like the ultimate thing that could happen. So I haven't had I haven't really had any input on the movie. I did get to go out for a few days when they were filming, which was beyond surreal. To hear an actress like say the words that you wrote is so strange. But yeah, I'm really excited to see. I know about as much as you all know, so I'm really excited to see what it is when it's done.
Yeah, I think we're all very excited. Maybe we'll have like a big viewing or something at the summer. Well, like within copyright laws and stuff. Yeah. Okay, so our last two questions are more a little like process and book based, but and you mentioned Department of Speculation as something that you'd read, maybe not while you're writing Nightbitch, but definitely influenced it. But was there anything that you read when you were working on the book, or something that you've read recently that you would recommend to us? Because we're always looking for those recommendations.
I usually am always reading, maybe not as much when I'm writing, and I don't think I was reading a lot when I was writing Nightbitch. I was just really focused on like getting the book out. I know that I had around that time read Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado, which is a short story collection, which I found really inspiring because it was brilliantly written. It was literary, but it was also speculative and experimental and genre bending. And that really excited me artistically. I love that book. It's also like feminist and queer. And it's just such a cool book. If you haven't read it, I think you would love it. I had also read all of the Elena Ferrante Neapolitan novels during that kind of 2 years of silence. Found those really inspiring, found Rachel Cusk's work really inspiring, A Life's Work, which is her book about motherhood. My most recent read, I wonder if you guys have read this for your book club. It's a pretty weird book, but I'm recommending it to everyone. It's a quick read. I think you'll all enjoy it. It's called Pure Color by Sheila Heti, and I have never had a favorite book, and it's my favorite book.
Pure Color. Okay. Yeah. That one was very popular in hardcover last year, and I feel like it's going to see really good stuff in paperback as well.
Yeah, it has a beautiful, if nothing else, it's a beautiful object.
Yes. Yes. So a lot of people in this group are actually fairly new. Been doing this book club for about 7 years, but we did read Her Body and Other Parties. Gosh, I don't remember when we read that. Maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah, a while ago.
Yeah, we love that one. Yeah,
it's a good one. Yeah.
Okay, well, so we always tomorrow or Thursday we send out the tickets for the next book club. We always include all of the suggestions, so we'll make sure all of these are in there. And then my last question for you, because I don't want to keep you too late, is can you tell us whether you're working on a new project, and if so, anything about it?
Sure. I'm finishing up a collection of short stories, which I might have started 20 years ago, which might also be vaguely autobiographical. But it's been really fun to return to it and write new stories. They're all linked, so it's a little kind of novelesque. And then I'm also developing a movie project, which is a new thing for me and is fun. So just kind of coming up with an outline for a story and getting to write totally crazy things, and see if someone once again will be insane enough to want to make a movie. So yeah, and I think there's a novel out there too on the horizon, but I'm gonna get past these 2 projects first.
Wow, that's a lot. Short story collection, maybe also a novel, and like in the future. Great. Well, I mean, I think we'll definitely keep an eye out for the short story collection whenever that's going to be available. Love linked short stories; those are always very fun, I think. Yeah. Does anyone have any final thoughts, questions for Rachel before we let her go? No? Well, thank you again so much. This has been a really beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed every moment of it.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And thank you all for being there and for reading. And it's just so exciting to see people come together around the book. And I wish I could be there with all of you and chat it up. So I hope you have a great night.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And then all you have to do really to exit is just close the screen. It feels very weird, but
okay. All right, I'll see ya. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
You're coming.